Alarms scream through the hallway before I even reach the meeting chamber. Red light floods the metal walls. My translator badge is shaking in my hand because my hand is shaking, not the badge. I was told one rule before I boarded this ship. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look the Queen in the eyes. Do not, under any circumstance, say anything that has not been approved by the diplomatic office 3 times over. I had every intention of following that rule. Then the doors open, and I forget every word of training I ever had. The chamber is enormous, built from black stone that seems to breathe with soft green light. 20 guards line the walls, each one taller than any human I have ever seen, with armor that looks grown rather than built. At the far end, on a throne carved from something that glows like captured starlight, sits Queen Mother Vexthara, ruler of the Krizathi hegemony, the empire that has swallowed 40 star systems without losing a single major battle. Ambassador Laura Bennett walks in front of me, spine straight, chin high, doing her best to look like she is not terrified. I am walking 2 steps behind her, doing a much worse job of the same thing. We are the first humans this empire has ever allowed inside its home world. Nobody knows if we are here to make peace or to be executed as a warning to the rest of our species. The tension in the room is so thick I can feel it pressing against my chest like a physical weight. Ambassador Bennett begins the greeting exactly as we rehearsed it 100 times back on the ship. I am supposed to translate her words a half-second after she says them, keeping my voice flat, professional, invisible. That is my only job. I am not a diplomat. I am not important. I am furniture that happens to speak 2 languages. The Queen rises from her throne. She is nearly 4 meters tall, her skin shifting between shades of deep blue and violet, patterns of light moving across her like slow lightning underwater. It is the most striking thing I have ever seen in my life, and for one terrible second, the thought escapes my mind before my training can stop it. The words leave my mouth in her own language, quiet, almost a whisper, never meant to be heard by anyone. You look like the inside of a supernova. The room goes silent, not quiet, silent, in a way that feels like the air itself has stopped moving. Ambassador Bennett's head snaps toward me, her eyes wide with something between horror and disbelief. Every guard in the room shifts their weight at the same instant, weapons still lowered, but ready. I feel my stomach drop through the floor. I just spoke without permission, in the presence of a ruler who commands an empire that could erase my entire species without much effort, and I did it by accident. I search my memory for every warning I was given. Never compliment a Krizathi noble directly, they told me, because among their people, unearned praise is treated as an insult, a suggestion that the speaker thinks the listener needs to be flattered like a child. I just handed the single most powerful being in this empire an insult wrapped inside what I meant as an honest compliment. I wait for the guards to move. I wait for Ambassador Bennett's career, and possibly my life, to end in this exact room. Instead, the Queen tilts her head. The patterns of light across her skin shift faster, brighter, in a way I have never read about in any briefing document. Her enormous eyes, black and endless, fixed directly on me instead of the ambassador. For a long moment nobody in the chamber breathes. Then something happens that should not be possible. Her mouth curves upward at the corners. It is small, almost hesitant, like a muscle she has not used in a very long time. It is, unmistakably, a smile. I have read every research paper available on Krizathi physiology before this mission. Not one of them mentions this species smiling. Not once. Not ever. Say it again, human, she says. Her voice is layered, low and resonant, like 2 tones speaking at once. The guards along the wall shift again, but this time their confusion mirrors mine. Ambassador Bennett's mouth opens slightly, no sound coming out. I glance sideways at Nathan Price, our mission's junior analyst, standing near the door, and his face has gone completely white. I do not know what to do. Every instinct tells me to apologize, to explain it was a mistake, to beg forgiveness before this turns into an incident that starts a war. But the Queen is still looking at me, waiting, and something about her expression tells me that backing down now would somehow be worse than the mistake itself. I clear my throat. My voice comes out smaller than I want it to. I said you look like the inside of a supernova, Your Majesty. Bright, powerful, the kind of thing you cannot look away from, even if it might be dangerous to watch. The silence stretches even longer this time. Then, slowly, deliberately, the Queen sits back down on her throne, the light patterns across her skin, settling into a calmer rhythm. She folds her long hands together and studies me the way someone studies a puzzle they did not expect to find interesting. You will return tomorrow, she says, still looking only at me, alone. Ambassador Bennett finally finds her voice. Your Majesty, she says carefully, my translator is a junior member of staff. Any further discussions should go through official channels, through myself, as head of this. The Queen raises one hand, and Ambassador Bennett stops speaking instantly, as if the gesture physically closed her mouth. It is the first time I understand, truly understand, how much power sits in this room, and how little any of us actually control what happens next. Tomorrow, the Queen repeats, alone. Then she rises again, turns, and walks through a hidden door behind the throne without another word. The guards relax their stance all at once, as if a switch has been flipped. The meeting, it seems, is over, though nothing about it went the way any of us expected. The walk back to our quarters happens in complete silence. Ambassador Bennett does not speak to me until the heavy door closes behind us, sealing off the hallway full of Krizathi guards who watched every second of what just happened. What did you say to her? Ambassador Bennett asks, her voice tight and controlled in the way people speak when they are trying very hard not to shout. I tell her the truth, because lying at this point seems pointless. I explain the words, the accident, the fact that it slipped out before I even realized what I was doing. She listens without interrupting, her expression shifting from anger to something closer to disbelief. That phrase, she says slowly, is on the list. The list of banned expressions. It is in the briefing packet. Page 11. I know, I say. I read it. I do not know how it happened. It just came out. Nathan Price, standing near the window with his arms crossed, lets out a short, nervous laugh. Well, he says, it did not get us killed. That has to count as some kind of success. Ambassador Bennett does not find this funny. She paces the small room, running one hand through her hair, clearly trying to figure out how to explain this to her superiors back on Earth without it sounding like her mission has already spiraled out of control on day one. I stand near the door, replaying the moment over and over in my mind. The way the Queen's expression changed, the way the entire room seemed to hold its breath around her, the words she used. Say it again. Nobody speaks to a monster and expects them to smile, I think. Nobody accidentally compliments the most feared ruler in known space and lives to talk about it. Yet here I am, standing in a borrowed room on an alien world, somehow being asked back for a private audience with a queen whose empire has never lost a war. Ambassador Bennett finally stops pacing and looks at me directly. Whatever happens tomorrow, she says, you say nothing without thinking first. Do you understand me? Nothing. I nod, though privately I am not sure that promise is one I can actually keep. Whatever happened in that chamber was not something I planned. It was not calculated. It was not clever diplomacy. It was simply true, spoken without thinking, and somehow that honesty cracked open something in a ruler who has probably heard nothing but careful, empty flattery for centuries. That night I do not sleep. I lie awake in the small metal room they have given us, staring at the ceiling, listening to the strange hum of a world I do not understand, wondering what tomorrow will bring. Somewhere beyond these walls, an empire that could destroy my entire planet without much effort is waiting to hear what I will say next. And for reasons I cannot explain, the thing that scares me most is not the danger. It is the fact that some small part of me is already looking forward to seeing her again. Morning on this world does not look like morning at all. There is no sun, only a soft blue light that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, filtering down through a ceiling of clouds that never seem to move. I am escorted from our quarters by 2 guards who do not speak a single word to me the entire walk. Their silence somehow feels louder than shouting. Ambassador Bennett tried everything last night to change the Queen's request. She sent messages through official channels asking for a translator to accompany me, or at the very least a security escort. Every message came back the same way. The Queen had requested me, alone. No exceptions were being made, and nobody in this empire, apparently, argues with what the Queen requests. The guards lead me through corridors I did not see yesterday, past rooms filled with strange machinery that hums with quiet energy, past windows that look out over a city built from black stone towers stretching farther than I can see. Everything about this place is beautiful in a way that makes my skin crawl, because I know beauty and danger often live very close together here. Eventually we reach a smaller chamber than the throne room, more private, with soft lighting and cushioned seating that looks designed for something other than a human body. The Queen is already there when I arrive, standing near a wide window, watching the city below. She does not turn immediately when I enter. "You may approach," one of the guards says to me in a low voice. Then both of them step back through the door and it seals shut behind them, leaving me completely alone with the most powerful being I have ever stood near. For a long moment neither of us speaks. I do not know the proper way to address her without an official present. I do not know if speaking first is allowed or if it is another one of the countless unspoken rules I have already broken once. Eventually she turns toward me, her eyes settling on my face with the same intense focus from yesterday. "Do you know how long it has been since someone has said something true to me?" she asks. The question catches me off guard. I shake my head slowly. "No, Your Majesty," I say. "I do not." 300 years, she says. Give or take a few cycles. In that time, I have heard every possible combination of praise a mind can construct. My beauty compared to stars, to oceans, to fire, to every possible wonder my people know how to imagine. Every word calculated, every syllable chosen for advantage. Flattery is currency here, human. It buys favor, it buys position, it buys safety from my temper. Nobody says anything to me simply because it is true. I do not know how to respond to that, so I say nothing, which seems to be the right choice, because she continues without waiting for me. "Yesterday you said something that was not calculated," she says. "I could tell, because it was clumsy, unpolished. You looked as though the words surprised you as much as they surprised me." "They did," I admit. "I was not supposed to speak at all." "Then why did you?" she asks, taking a step closer. I think about lying, about giving some careful diplomatic answer that would make Ambassador Bennett proud. Instead, the truth comes out again, the same way it did yesterday, before I can stop it. "Because it was true," I say. "You are the most striking thing I have ever seen. I did not think about consequences. I just said what I was thinking." The room falls quiet again, but this silence feels different from yesterday's. Less dangerous, more curious. The Queen studies me for a long moment, then gestures toward one of the cushioned seats near the window. "Sit," she says. "I have decided something, and I want you to hear it directly from me before the rest of my court learns of it." I sit carefully, my heart still pounding, unsure what decision could possibly involve someone as insignificant as myself. She remains standing, looking out over the city again as she speaks. "You will attend my court daily," she says. "You will speak freely, without a script, without approval from your ambassador. I want to hear things that are true, even if they are small, even if they are clumsy. In exchange, you will have my protection, which in this empire is worth more than any weapon your species possesses." I try to process what she is saying. This is not a translator's job anymore. This is something else entirely, something with no name in any diplomatic handbook I have ever studied. "Your Majesty," I say carefully, "I am not a diplomat. I do not know your customs well enough to serve in this role. I could make a mistake that costs more than an accidental compliment." That, she says, turning back toward me, is precisely why I have chosen you. Every noble in my court knows the customs perfectly. Every noble in my court also knows exactly how to use those customs as weapons. You know nothing, which means you cannot lie to me the way they do. There is something almost lonely in the way she says this, something beneath the power and the title that sounds remarkably human, despite everything about her that is not. I think about Ambassador Bennett's warning from last night, say nothing without thinking first. I think about how impossible that promise already feels. I will need to discuss this with my ambassador, I say. Your ambassador does not command you, the Queen replies, not unkindly, but with absolute certainty. I do. Effective from this moment, you answer to my court. Before I can respond, the doors behind me open, and Ambassador Bennett walks in, clearly having been informed the moment the decision was made. Her face is a mixture of alarm and something close to panic, though she does her best to hide it behind diplomatic composure. Your Majesty, she says, bowing slightly, may I ask what role you intend for my staff member? The Queen's gaze does not leave me as she answers. He will be my voice, she says. He will speak in my court, and he will report to no one but myself during his time here. Consider it an honor extended to your species, one that has never been offered before. Ambassador Bennett opens her mouth to argue, then closes it again, clearly recognizing that arguing with this ruler is not a strategy that ends well for anyone. She glances at me instead, her expression somewhere between worry and warning. Be careful, she says quietly, in English, as though the Queen might not understand. Every word you say here matters more than you know. I nod, though I already sense that careful is not a word that fits well with whatever is happening to my life right now. Over the following days, I am brought into the Queen's court every morning. I stand near her throne, technically still listed as her translator, though everyone in the chamber now understands my role has changed into something else entirely. Nobles arrive with requests, complaints, elaborate speeches wrapped in flattery so thick it is almost impossible to find the actual point buried underneath. After each audience, the Queen turns to me and asks the same question. What do you think, truly? At first I try to be diplomatic, softening my honest opinions the way I imagine a real ambassador would. She sees through it immediately every single time, waving her hand dismissively until I say what I actually believe. Slowly, I stop trying to soften things. I tell her when a noble's request sounds greedy. I tell her when a speech sounds hollow despite its beautiful words. I tell her, once, that her throne looks uncomfortable, which makes one of the guards nearby make a strange choking sound that I later learn was an attempt to hide laughter, something I did not know Krizathi guards were capable of. The Queen begins to change during these sessions, subtly but unmistakably. She sits straighter. She asks more questions. She lingers longer over my honest, unpolished observations than she ever does over the practiced words of her most senior advisors. Word spreads quickly through the palace that the Queen has taken an unusual interest in the human translator, and not everyone is pleased about it. One afternoon, as I am walking back to my quarters, a tall Krizathi noble steps directly into my path, blocking the hallway. His name, I later learn, is Kale Dorn, a senior member of the court, known for his sharp tongue and sharper ambitions. Human, he says, his tone dripping with something between amusement and contempt, you seem to have found yourself quite comfortable in a position you do not understand. I do not respond immediately, remembering Ambassador Bennett's warnings about the games played within this court. Kale Dorn circles slowly, studying me the way a predator studies something it has not decided whether to eat. The Queen finds your ignorance amusing for now, he continues. Ignorance does not remain amusing forever. When she tires of your clumsy little compliments, you will find this palace to be a very unforgiving place for creatures who do not understand its rules. Is that a warning? I ask, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounds. Call it advice, he says, smiling in a way that shows too many teeth. Enjoy your position while it lasts, human. Positions like yours rarely last long in this court. He walks away without waiting for a response, leaving me standing alone in the hallway with my heart pounding. I think about Ambassador Bennett's face when she warned me. I think about the Queen's loneliness hidden beneath 300 years of hollow flattery. And I think, with a growing sense of unease, that Cale Dorn might be exactly right about how dangerous this position could become. That night, I report the encounter to Ambassador Bennett, who listens with her jaw tightening more with every sentence. When I finish, she sits back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "This is exactly what I feared," she says. "You have become a piece on a board you do not understand, in a game that has been running for centuries before you arrived. The Queen's favor makes you valuable. It also makes you a target." "What should I do?" I ask. She looks at me for a long moment before answering. "Keep being honest," she says finally, though I can tell the advice pains her to give. "It is the only weapon you actually have in a place like this. Everyone else here knows how to lie beautifully. You do not. Strangely enough, that might be the only thing keeping you alive." I lie awake again that night, staring at the strange blue light filtering through my window, thinking about Cale Dorn's smile, about the Queen's careful attention, about how quickly my simple job as a translator has become something far more dangerous and far more important than I ever expected it to be. The banquet hall glows with soft violet light, and every noble seated at the long curved tables is watching me the moment I walk through the doors. I have learned, over these past several weeks, that being watched in this court is never a comfortable thing. It usually means someone is calculating how to use you, or how to remove you. Tonight is different from the daily audiences I have grown used to. This is a formal gathering, one where every word spoken carries weight, where compliments are exchanged like carefully aimed weapons, and where I am expected to sit near the Queen's side as her voice, a title that still feels strange every time I hear it said aloud. Cale Dorn sits near the head of the table, closer to the Queen than protocol usually allows for a noble of his rank, which tells me he has been working hard these past weeks to climb higher in her favor, or perhaps closer to striking distance of mine. He watches me take my seat with a small, satisfied smile, the kind of expression that makes my stomach tighten with worry before anyone has even said a single word. The evening begins with the usual rituals. Nobles rise one by one to offer elaborate praise to the Queen, comparing her wisdom to ancient stars, her strength to collapsing suns, her mercy to the gentle turning of seasons. I have heard dozens of these speeches by now, and I have learned to recognize the particular hollow rhythm they follow, words stacked carefully for maximum effect, meaning almost entirely absent underneath the polish. The Queen listens to each one with the same patient, distant expression, the same one she wore the very first day I met her, before I accidentally cracked something open in her that nobody else here seems able to reach. When my turn comes to speak, as it always does now near the end of these gatherings, the entire hall goes quiet in a way that feels different from mere politeness. It feels like anticipation, like everyone is waiting to see whether tonight will be the night the human finally says something that gets him removed from this court permanently. I keep my words simple, the way I always do. I mention a small moment from earlier in the week, when the Queen paused during a difficult negotiation to ask about the well-being of a servant who had stumbled while carrying a tray. It was not a grand gesture. It was not the kind of thing anyone would normally build a speech around, but it was true, and it was the kind of small kindness that told me more about who she actually is than any of the elaborate comparisons to stars and suns ever could. When I finish, the silence stretches for a long moment before the Queen speaks. "That," she says, looking directly at me, "is the only speech tonight that was not designed to flatter me. It is also the only one I actually believed." A ripple moves through the hall, nobles exchanging glances, some annoyed, some intrigued. Cale Dorn's expression does not change, but I notice his hand tightening slightly around the cup in front of him. Later, as the formal portion of the banquet ends and guests begin mingling through the hall, Cale Dorn approaches me directly, a fresh cup of dark liquid in his hand, his smile as sharp as ever. "You continue to impress, human," he says, his voice smooth and pleasant on the surface, though I have learned enough by now to hear the edge hidden underneath. Tell me, do you enjoy your new position? Being watched, being discussed, being envied by nobles who have spent lifetimes earning what you have gained by simple accident. I have grown more careful with him over these past weeks, choosing my words the way I imagine a chess player chooses moves, though I am still learning the rules of a game everyone else here has played since birth. I am simply honest, I say. That is not the same as earning a position through strategy. I understand that difference, even if others do not always see it the same way. Honesty, he repeats, tasting the word like it amuses him. A rare currency in this court, I admit. Rare enough that some might wonder if it can truly be trusted, or if it is simply a different kind of performance, one clever enough to fool even the queen herself. Before I can respond, he offers me the cup in his hand, a gesture that in Krizathi custom, I have learned, signals a form of formal respect between rivals. Refusing it outright would be seen as a serious insult. Accepting it, however, comes with its own risks I am only beginning to understand. A toast, he says, to honesty, and to seeing how long it survives in a court built on far older traditions. I take the cup carefully, aware of dozens of eyes watching the exchange from across the hall. Something about his expression, a flicker of anticipation beneath the polite smile, sends a warning through my chest. I glance toward the queen, who is watching this exchange from her seat, with an unreadable expression, making no move to intervene. I do not drink immediately, choosing instead to hold the cup and study him for a moment. I have learned enough Krizathi customs by now to recognize when something feels wrong, even if I cannot name exactly what. Perhaps, I say slowly, honesty also means admitting when a toast feels less like respect and more like a test. The hall around us grows quieter as more nobles notice the exchange. Kael Dorn's smile falters slightly, just for a moment, before he recovers it. A clever accusation for someone who claims to know nothing of our customs, he says. I am learning quickly, I reply, setting the cup down without drinking from it. I have found that survival tends to speed up the process. A quiet murmur moves through the gathered nobles, some clearly entertained by the tension, others watching with narrowed eyes, recalculating whatever opinion they had formed of me before tonight. Kael Dorn studies me for a long moment, then inclines his head slightly, a gesture that could be respect or could be a warning, and walks away without another word. Later that night, back in my quarters, Ambassador Bennett listens to my account of the evening with growing concern etched across her face. That cup, she says, once I finish describing it, do you understand what would have happened if you had actually consumed whatever was inside it? I shake my head slowly. I assumed it was some kind of political trap, I say, but I did not know the details. There are compounds in Krizathi culture, she explains, used specifically to induce truthful confessions, stripping away any careful control over what a person says next. If Kael Dorn wanted to expose something damaging about you, about your honesty being some elaborate performance after all, that cup would have forced the truth out of you in front of the entire court, true or not, in whatever twisted form the compound produced. The thought sends a cold chill through me. I think about how close I came to drinking from that cup, simply trying to follow what I believed was proper etiquette. I think about how thin the line has become between surviving in this court and walking directly into a trap I did not even recognize as one. You need to be more careful, Ambassador Bennett says, her voice tight with worry. Kael Dorn is not simply testing you for sport. He sees you as a genuine threat to his position, and men like him do not stop after a single failed attempt. Over the following days, the attempts against me grow more frequent, though never quite obvious enough to accuse anyone directly. A servant delivers food to my quarters that Ambassador Bennett insists on testing before I eat, discovering trace amounts of something that would have made me violently ill for days. A message arrives claiming to be from the Queen, requesting a private meeting in a remote section of the palace, one that turns out to be entirely fabricated when I mention it to her directly during our next audience. Small threats disguised as accidents, each one calculated to remove me quietly, without ever tracing responsibility back to whoever arranged them. I begin to understand, slowly and uncomfortably, that surviving in this court requires more than simple honesty. It requires learning to see the game being played around me, even if I refuse to play it the same manipulative way everyone else does. During one of our private conversations, the Queen notices the exhaustion in my expression, the tension I have been carrying since the incident with Kale Dorn's cup. She studies me for a long moment before speaking. "You have made enemies," she says. "It was inevitable. Every creature who gains my favor eventually does." "Your Majesty," I say carefully, "may I ask you something honestly?" She nods, gesturing for me to continue. "Why do you allow this?" I ask. "You are the most powerful being in this empire. If you wish to protect me from these games, you could simply do so with a single command." Her expression grows thoughtful, distant, the same look she wore during our very first private conversation weeks ago. "Because protection given too easily teaches nothing," she says finally. "I did not survive 300 years of rule by having every threat removed before I learned to recognize it myself. If you are to remain useful to me, truly useful, you must learn to survive this court on your own understanding, not simply through my shield." The answer frustrates me, though somewhere beneath the frustration, I recognize a kind of respect in it, an acknowledgement that she sees me as something more than simply a curiosity to be protected and displayed. "I will not let them break me," I say, more to myself than to her. She studies me for a long moment, something shifting behind her dark, endless eyes. "I am beginning to believe that," she says quietly, "which is precisely why Kale Dorn fears you more with every passing day." That night, walking back through the quiet corridors toward my quarters, I notice a shadow moving along the far wall, deliberately staying just out of clear sight. I stop walking, my heart pounding, waiting to see if it will reveal itself. After a long, tense moment, it retreats further into the darkness without approaching. I do not know who was watching me tonight, or what they intended, but I understand now, more clearly than ever before, that Kale Dorn's warning from weeks ago was not an exaggeration. Positions like mine, gained through nothing but an honest accident, truly do not last long in a court built entirely on calculated lies. The only question left is whether my honesty will be enough to survive what comes next, or whether it will simply make me an easier target for those determined to remove me before I can change anything at all. The summons arrives before dawn, delivered by two guards whose expressions tell me immediately that something has gone seriously wrong. They do not explain where we are going as they lead me through unfamiliar corridors, past sections of the palace I have never seen before, until we reach a massive chamber filled with nearly every noble in the Krizathi court, along with rows of armed guards standing at rigid attention along every wall. Ambassador Bennett is already there when I arrive, her face pale with worry, standing beside Nathan Price near the edge of the gathered crowd. She catches my eye across the room, and the fear I see there sends my own heart racing faster. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform, stands the Queen, though her expression is unlike anything I have seen from her before, cold and unreadable in a way that makes my stomach drop. Beside her stands Kale Dorn, along with several other senior nobles I recognize from countless banquets and audiences over these past weeks. I am led forward to stand alone at the center of the chamber floor, every eye in the room fixed on me. The silence stretches for a long, agonizing moment before one of the senior nobles steps forward and begins to speak, his voice carrying easily through the massive space. "This human stands accused," he announces, "of using deceptive words to manipulate our queen, of serving as an agent for his species, designed to weaken this empire from within its own court. Evidence has been presented suggesting his so-called honesty is nothing more than a carefully constructed performance, meant to gain trust before delivering information back to his human superiors that could compromise the safety of our hegemony." A wave of murmurs moves through the gathered crowd. I search for the Queen's expression, hoping for some sign of reassurance, but her face remains carefully blank, giving nothing away. I want to speak immediately, to deny every word of this accusation, but I remember something Ambassador Bennett taught me weeks ago, something about the danger of speaking too quickly in formal Krizathi proceedings. I force myself to remain silent, waiting to hear the full extent of what I am being accused of before responding. Cale Dorn steps forward next, and though his expression carries the same practiced calm as always, I can see something colder underneath it now, something that tells me this moment has been planned carefully for weeks. "We have intercepted communications," he announces, gesturing toward a small device held by one of the guards, showing this human reporting details of our court's inner workings back to his ambassador, information that could easily be used against our empire should hostilities ever resume between our species. The device projects a recording into the air, my own voice playing back a conversation I recognize immediately, one I had with Ambassador Bennett weeks ago, about court customs and the political dynamics I was still trying to understand. The words have been cut and rearranged, stripped of context, twisted into something that sounds far more sinister than the innocent conversation it actually was. "That recording has been altered," I say finally, unable to stay silent any longer despite the risk. "Those words were taken from a private conversation about court customs, nothing more. Listen to the full recording, unedited, and you will hear the truth." Cale Dorn smiles thinly. "A convenient claim for someone caught in the act of betrayal," he says. I glance toward the Queen again, desperate for some sign of support, but she remains silent, watching the proceedings unfold with the same unreadable expression she has worn since I arrived. A cold fear settles into my chest. Has everything I believed about our connection these past weeks been wrong? Was I simply a temporary curiosity, easily discarded the moment my usefulness became inconvenient? Ambassador Bennett steps forward from the crowd despite the guards moving to block her path. "Your Majesty," she calls out, "this human has served your court faithfully." These accusations are clearly fabricated by someone threatened by his position. I ask that a full, unedited review of this evidence be conducted before any judgment is passed. The senior noble who began the proceedings shakes his head slowly. "The evidence has already been thoroughly examined by the court's own investigators," he says. "The verdict rests now with our queen alone." Every eye in the chamber turns toward the throne. I hold my breath, my heart pounding so loudly I am certain everyone nearby can hear it. This is the moment, I realize, where everything I have built over these past weeks will either be proven real or revealed as nothing more than an elaborate misunderstanding that is about to cost me everything. The Queen rises slowly from her seat, and the entire chamber falls into complete silence. She studies me for a long, unbearable moment, before finally speaking, her voice carrying easily through the massive space. "I have known of this plot for many cycles," she says. The words send a ripple of shock through the gathered nobles. Cale Dorn's confident expression falters for the first time, uncertainty flickering across his features. "Your Majesty," he begins, but she raises one hand, silencing him instantly the same way she silenced Ambassador Bennett weeks ago during our very first meeting. "I have watched this conspiracy form for weeks," she continues, her gaze sweeping across the gathered nobles. "I have watched loyal servants twisted into instruments meant to remove someone who threatened nothing except the comfortable lies this court has depended on for centuries. I allowed it to unfold because I wished to see how far it would go, and whether the human at the center of it would survive the storm on his own, without my direct intervention." She turns her attention back to me, and for the first time since I arrived in this chamber, something warmer flickers behind her dark eyes. "You have not betrayed me," she says. "You have done the opposite. Every word you have spoken in my presence has been true, even when truth was inconvenient, even when it would have been far safer to lie. That is precisely why you were targeted. Not because you are a threat to this empire, but because you are a threat to those who have built their entire power on deception." Cale Dorn takes a step backward, his composure finally cracking as guards begin moving toward him from both sides of the chamber. "Your Majesty," he says quickly, "this is clearly a misunderstanding. I acted only out of concern for the Empire's safety." "You acted out of fear," the Queen replies coldly. "Fear that an honest voice in my court might finally expose how much of this empire runs on carefully maintained lies, rather than genuine loyalty. That fear has now cost you everything you attempted to protect." The guards seize Cale Dorn by both arms, leading him from the chamber as he continues protesting his innocence, though nobody in the room seems inclined to believe him any longer. The gathered nobles watch in stunned silence, clearly recalculating the political landscape that has just shifted dramatically before their eyes. The Queen turns back toward me, and the chamber remains utterly silent as she descends from her platform, walking directly toward where I stand at the center of the room. "I apologize for allowing this to progress as far as it did," she says quietly, her voice meant only for me despite the crowd surrounding us. "I needed the court to witness this outcome themselves, rather than simply hearing that I dismissed the accusations without evidence. Some lessons only take root when people see them proven with their own eyes." "I understand," I say, though my voice still carries the tremor of everything I just experienced, though I admit, I was beginning to wonder if you had abandoned me to this. "Never," she says, and something in the simple certainty of that single word settles the last of the fear still sitting heavy in my chest. Ambassador Bennett approaches cautiously once the crowd begins dispersing, her expression somewhere between relief and lingering shock. "That was," she says slowly, choosing her next words with visible care, "the single most dangerous moment of this entire mission." "It is over now," I tell her, though even as I say it, I recognize the shift that has just occurred, not simply in my own position within this court, but in something deeper about how this empire's nobility now understands the value of honesty over the carefully performed lies they have relied upon for generations. As the chamber empties, the Queen remains standing near me a moment longer, studying my face with an expression I have not seen from her before, something quieter, something almost fragile beneath the composed power she carries so effortlessly in front of her court. "You survived their storm," she says softly, "and in doing so, you have changed something in this palace that has not shifted in 3 centuries. I am curious to see what else an honest voice might change, given enough time." I do not have an answer for that yet, but standing there in the emptying chamber, still recovering from the fear of what could have happened, I understand for the first time that whatever this strange, accidental position has become, it is no longer something I can simply walk away from, even if I wanted to. 3 months have passed since the trial in the Great Chamber, though it feels like a lifetime compressed into those short weeks. The peace treaty between humanity and the Krizathi hegemony was signed 2 days ago, ending decades of uncertainty and fear between our two peoples, and for the first time since I arrived on this world, the palace corridors feel less like a battlefield of hidden knives and more like something approaching, if not quite friendship, at least mutual respect. Ambassador Bennett received full credit for the historic agreement, her name recorded in every human record as the diplomat who successfully secured peace with an empire that had never before signed such a treaty with any species it once considered conquering. I do not mind the lack of recognition. I never expected any credit for what happened here. I simply wanted to survive it, and somewhere along the way, without quite meaning to, I became something this empire had never possessed before. Today, however, marks my final scheduled audience before returning home with the rest of the diplomatic mission. My belongings are already packed, waiting near the transport that will carry us back to the ship in only a few hours. Nathan Price has already said his goodbyes to the palace staff he grew close to during our stay, and Ambassador Bennett is finishing final paperwork with the court's senior officials in a nearby chamber. I walk through the familiar corridors one final time, past the banquet hall where Cale Dorn offered me that dangerous cup, past the great chamber where I nearly lost everything during that tense trial, until I reach the private meeting room where this entire strange journey first truly began weeks ago. The Queen is waiting near the window, watching the city below the same way she was during our very first private conversation. She turns as I enter, and something in her expression today feels different, softer somehow, though I cannot quite name what has shifted. You leave today, she says, though it is not really a question. Let the dumb. Yes, Your Majesty, I say. The transport departs within a few hours. She nods slowly, turning back toward the window for a moment before speaking again. I have thought carefully about what to say during this final conversation, she admits. It is strange, considering how easily words came between us during every other meeting we have shared these past months. I understand that feeling, I say. I have been trying to find the right words myself, and nothing feels quite adequate for everything that has happened here. She turns fully toward me now, studying my face with the same intense focus she showed during our very first meeting in the throne room, though the fear I once felt under that gaze has long since faded into something closer to genuine warmth. Say something true, she says quietly, one final time before you leave this world. Not for my court, not for your ambassador's records, simply for me. I think carefully about her request, remembering everything these past months have taught me, remembering the loneliness she confessed to during our first private conversation, 300 years without a single honest word spoken to her by anyone who did not want something in return. You are not what I expected when I arrived here, I say slowly. I expected a ruler feared across an empire, someone distant and untouchable, someone who commanded through power alone. Instead, I found someone who was simply starving for a single honest word, someone who built an entire empire around her, yet somehow remained completely alone within it. I am glad I was clumsy enough that first day to break through that isolation, even if it was only by accident. For a long moment, she says nothing at all. Then, slowly, she laughs, a sound I have never heard from her before, warm and genuine, completely unlike the careful, measured tones she uses during formal court proceedings. It is a sound, I realize, that likely has not echoed through this palace in longer than I can imagine. 300 years, she says once the laughter fades, and it took a nervous human translator forgetting his training to finally make me laugh again. I did not intend to change anything when I arrived here, I admit. I only intended to survive the day without embarrassing my ambassador. And yet, she says, moving closer, you changed an empire built on centuries of careful deception simply by refusing to lie. She reaches into a small compartment near the window, retrieving what appears to be a small, intricately carved medallion, its surface etched with symbols I do not recognize, glowing faintly with the same soft light that seems to run through everything in this palace. This grants you a title that has never existed within my empire before today, she says, placing it carefully into my hands. Voice Keeper, a permanent position, honorary though it may be, granting you the right to speak in my court whenever you choose, without fear of consequence, for as long as you live. I stare down at the medallion, its weight surprisingly heavy in my palm, understanding slowly what she is offering me, a connection between our two peoples that extends far beyond the formal treaty signed only days ago. I do not know what to say, I admit. Then say nothing, she replies, smiling. Silence, when honest, carries its own kind of truth. We stand together near the window for a long moment, watching the strange blue light of this world's endless morning stretch across the black towers of the city below, neither of us speaking, both of us understanding that some moments do not require words to hold their full meaning. Eventually, the guards arrive to inform me that the transport is ready for departure, and the moment gently dissolves back into the practical realities of leaving this world behind. The Queen walks with me to the palace entrance, an escort she has never personally provided for any visitor before, according to the whispers I catch from the guards along our path. Ambassador Bennett and Nathan Price are already waiting near the transport when we arrive, both of them watching with visible surprise as the Queen herself walks me all the way to the departure point. Ambassador Bennett's expression carries a complicated mixture of pride and lingering disbelief at everything that has unfolded during these past months. Perhaps, the Queen says quietly, as I prepare to board the transport, my empire will learn something valuable from this strange accident of yours. Perhaps honesty, clumsy and unpolished as it often is, holds more value than 3 centuries of careful, calculated words ever could. I hope so, Your Majesty, I say. Vexthara, she corrects gently. Between us, that name will suffice. I nod, unable to fully explain the strange mixture of relief and something close to sadness settling in my chest as I board the transport. Through the small window, I watch her standing at the entrance of the palace, patterns of light moving slowly across her skin, watching until the transport lifts fully into the sky and the black towers of her city shrink slowly beneath the clouds. Nathan Price leans over from his seat once we are fully underway, his expression somewhere between amazement and disbelief. You do realize, he says, shaking his head slowly, that none of this happened because of careful planning or clever diplomacy. It happened because you forgot your training and said something honest by accident. I think about the throne room on that very first day, the terror I felt the moment those words left my mouth, the impossible smile that followed, the 4 words that changed everything that came after. I think about Cale Dorn's cup, the trial in the great chamber, the loneliness hidden beneath 300 years of careful, hollow flattery. Sometimes, I say slowly, watching the last edges of the Krizathi homeworld disappear beneath the clouds, the most important things happen exactly that way. Not through careful planning, but through simple, accidental truth, spoken before fear has a chance to stop it. Ambassador Bennett, listening quietly from across the cabin, allows herself a small, genuine smile for what feels like the first time since our mission began. Perhaps, she says, that is a lesson worth remembering, long after this mission has ended. I hold the small medallion tightly in my hand as the transport carries us back toward our waiting ship, and somewhere far behind us, an empire that has never known genuine honesty begins, slowly and carefully, to learn what it might mean to hear it, one true word at a time.